Hi, Dr. Newman here, and this is one of our week 1 wrap-up videos for the discussion board, and in this one I'm talking about discussion board topic number 0, I think it was, which was asking you about your linguistic pet peeves, the things people say or write that just kind of irritate you. Now, one of you, I think it was Kimmy, said that what bothers you is when people have problems with what people say or speak. And that's a very linguistics attitude, because for a linguist, you don't judge, you just collect data, right? You just look at all forms of speech and all dialects are equally valid, and that the attitudes that we bring are often based on regional, class, sometimes racial, sometimes gender, and other kinds of prejudices that we might have. So Kimmy makes a stand against what she calls, or what, I don't think she called it this, but what is called linguistic prescriptivism. And prescriptivism is when you prescribe how people are supposed to or shouldn't speak. But we all do this to a certain degree, I think. And I know I'm not as enlightened as Kimmy in this respect. There are things that bother me. In the discussion board, I mentioned how here in the Ozarks, I hear people say oftentimes instead of just often, or they write that in their papers. Oftentimes, just say often, just say often. But again, that's just my thing. That's a local colloquial feature. And we also can talk about how, as some of you mentioned this, different kinds of speech are appropriate to different domains of interaction. So sometimes you may speak in a more sort of formal or correct way when you're at the university in a classroom, or you're at the bank, or something like that. And when you're talking with your family or your friends, you may use more regionalisms, more slang. Even your pronunciation may change, right? You may say "I seen" when you're with your cousins, but you may very consciously say "I saw" when you're around strangers. So one interesting thing that I want to talk about is how various of the problems that you had, and I don't think I have all of them here, but I have many of them. One thing I want to talk about is what's called a linguistic level of organization. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but when linguists study language, they study at different levels. They study it at the level of sound, which is phonetics, and how that sound is selected and organized into a possible range of sounds for each language, and that's phonology. Different languages have different phonological systems that take a different slice of the possible ranges of sounds that the human mouth can express. We'll talk about that more this coming week. And then above that, there's morphology, which is how different chunks of words get put together. So that ing added to walk does something different with the word walk. That's just a very small example of morphology. And then above morphology is syntax, which is how the ordering of words creates meaning, and how different words put together create sentences. It studies how sentences are formed. And this has been one of the main focuses of theoretical linguistics for the last 50 years. And above the level of syntax is discourse, which is what language means in context, how sentences come together to form different units of meaning, how people talk with each other. And above that is we get into what you might call sociolinguistics, where we talk about different language use at different domains or regions or classes or registers. It's a word we'll talk about. So some of these are problems that people have at the level of phonology. For example, saying Missouri rather than Missouri, or Nevada instead of Nevada, which I think is the wrong thing. I'm not sure. I'm from the East, so I don't really care about Nevada versus Nevada. Personally, what else? People who say, trying to look for another example of a phonological error. Well, one thing I've had people in the class say in the past is how it bothers them is when people say wash instead of wash. That's an example of a phonetic or a phonological pet peeve. And then some of these are morphological, right? People have a problem with saying, like when you say "I seen" instead of "I saw," you're doing the wrong morpheme according to prescriptive grammar. And that's also syntactic as well. I feel badly instead of I feel bad is another example of a problem with morphology. A lot of these problems have to do with another level of organization of language, another way of looking at a language system, which is lexis, the vocabulary of a language, the whole stable of words. And a lot of these are words that bother people. Oh, sorry, Walmarts. Going to the Walmarts or anyways instead of anyway. That's another morphological pet peeve. Let's see. Lexical vocabulary problems include people saying essentially too much. Ratiocinate, that's funny. Don't read Edgar Allan Poe's Dupin Mysteries because he uses that word all the time. Moist, of course, is kind of a viral thing. It's sort of an infectious idea. Once you hear someone say that the word moist bothers you, it's kind of like one of those ideas you can't get out of your head. Panties, maybe, too. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know. Some of these have to do with, let's see, awesome or amazing or wholesome. Some of these words that people say that have kind of lost their meaning over time, right? We do have a tendency towards hyperbole, especially in American English. Everything is huge or amazing or fantastic, right? The British are a little more, they have a tendency towards understatement, like not half bad. If a Brit says it, means that it's pretty amazing. So let's see, other lexical items. Get her done. Irregardless. Yeah, that's I don't really know. I don't have a strong opinion about that one. A lot of these, yins, this is a morphological one too, right? Because this is, yins is a second person plural. It's the version of y'all that they say. I heard around Pittsburgh, the sort of the Allegheny Mountains, and going into Pittsburgh and into parts of eastern Ohio, but maybe in parts of Missouri too. And there's historical reasons probably for this. Yins is a contraction of you ones. Just like y'all is you all. Now, some of my cousins in Long Island, they have their own second-person plural. They say yous. Hey, yous guys eat yet? And that just, it's like nails on the chalkboard for me. But, for you, that might sound funny. It's like a movie. Just like I hear yins, and I'm like, hey, that's quirky. Same thing with Walmarts. But yeah, when people say whenever instead of when they mean a very specific time, that's annoying. Okay, a lot of these have to do with differences, with the problem of the English writing system and the weirdness of the English writing system. So, for example, when we write should of instead of should have, this is correctly transcribing the fact that we often reduce the sound of an unaccented word. Like when we say should have, nobody says I should have done that. We go, I should have done that. That's how we tend to pronounce it. And this is accurately transcribing that sound. Same with for all intents and purposes. No, that's just wrong. For all intents and purposes. These are funny. Yeah, check in versus check out. Some of these are problems of idiom, right? And that gets into syntax. I don't want no one to. This double negative. We're going to get into this. This was correct English up until the 18th century. Chaucer and Shakespeare both used double negatives in their writing. So some of these things used to be okay and are now wrong. As I pointed out in the discussion board, Shakespeare uses worser all the time. But, we tend to correct things as we go. I don't need to go into every last little thing, but I wanted to point out that a lot of these are based on language attitudes that come from your experience. You have associations with people or experiences, or you're trying to, I don't know. One of the things I want to make you sensitive to in this class is the historical and social origins of your language attitudes. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have them. I'm not saying that it's wrong to not like a particular expression or that anything goes, right? If somebody writes, I seen this in an essay for me, then I mark it incorrect and I tell them to work on that. The way I see it, though, it's like clothing. You have street clothing and you have formal clothing, right? And we have street language, everyday language, we have our sweatpants language, and then we have our tuxedo language. And I want my students to have command over both and to appreciate both and understand that it's not a matter of right or wrong, but it's a matter of domain. However, if you say espresso instead of espresso or momento instead of memento, that's just wrong. Don't do that. All right, this has been a public service announcement. If you have any questions about this short video, get at me in Teams. The videos this week are going to talk more about this linguistic level of organization thing that I talked about today. I just wanted to get into that a little bit with you. Cheers.